So welcome. You can see on the right side of the screen, our agenda for the day. I'm really gonna talk you through NHDWebCentral, building all the different elements of a simple website on NHDWebCentral for your History Fair project. We're gonna go through logging in and working with kind of getting your account type of stuff set up in NHDWebCentral quickly. I'm guessing most of you have done that step already, so we'll move fairly quickly through there. And then we'll talk about kind of containers that you'll use to build your website. We'll talk about adding the different elements like text and titles and images and things like that. Then we'll talk about how to arrange things so that they look the way you want them to appear on the page. We'll talk about colors and design and kind of those visual elements. Talk about creating different pages. So your website is made up of different pages, and we'll talk about how to create those different pages and create navigation between them. And then we will talk about embedding PDF files, which is something you will need to put your annotated bibliography and your process paper on the site. As we go, I will ask Sarah a few times to kind of put some different things in the chat, some links that will be useful for you or that I'll mention as we go. Most of those links we will also then make sure that we send you again an email after this to follow up. So if you miss those again in the chat or whatever, we'll make sure that we send those to you. So if you want to follow along with this workshop at a later time and have those links to follow along with, we'll make sure that is easy for you to do. So before I get into that agenda, I just kind of outlined for you, there are a couple of things I wanted to show you. One is that I have here kind of a basic page that I just started. This is all there is to it. It just says NHDWebCentral Workshop. I'm going to leave that page, sign in as my, well, first I actually want to show you guys a personal account that I created. So this is a site that I made. I like playing hockey and watching hockey. And so I like the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team. And I was always curious. I had questions about that. Kind of the representation of that name and using the name of a Native American person for a hockey team and things like that. So that was what made me want to create this site. And this is my personal site. It's zoomed in and I need to zoom out so it shows like correctly for you. But I'm going to zoom it back in when I'm editing the site. So this is kind of a demo site that I made. You can see a title. I've got navigation to different pages here. I can click one of those pages in my navigation. It's going to take me to some different information and some pictures that I've set up. And I'm showing you this because these are all the different elements that I will be showing you how to create in your site and going over today. So by the end of kind of today, that doesn't show up exactly the way I was hoping it would. There we go. But by the end of the site, the workshop today, I will have created another site that looks pretty similar to this. And so you will be able to create one too if you want to follow along. What I'm going to do now, though, is sign in as my Chicago Metro History Fair account. And you can see I don't have any website at all saved. So this is just like I've signed in for the very first time to NHDWebCentral and have never created my account. So I'm going to be kind of starting from scratch here today. And then the last thing before I really truly jump in that I wanted to show you is I already have a folder on my computer with some of the sources that I'll be using. So I have a couple of like photo images that I'll be using on my website today. I've already kind of downloaded those onto my computer and put them in a folder on my desktop that I know where it is and it's easy to access. I really, really just want to emphasize the more you already have your research, the more you have your sources figured out, the more you kind of know what you want your website to say ahead of time, the easier the creation process will be. If you're trying to figure out your argument and what you want to talk about and narrow down your topic and kind of figure out your thesis while you are creating your website, that is going to be really challenging to kind of do both of those things at once. So the more you can have ready to go before you start creating your website, the better. I have a folder on my computer that's not going to show up on my kind of shared screen that you all can see, but it has these sources in it, right? There's one image, there's another image, and then there's a pretty long secondary text source. So you might have a document like this. This is just the Google Doc I was using to keep track of my sources and my citations and things like that. You might have one that looks kind of like this or a little bit different, but you have probably somewhere that you're keeping track of the different sources that you found. And it's a really good idea to download those files, especially the images that you're going to need into a folder on your computer just for quick access to load onto your site. So that's kind of like what you'll need to have ready before we start. So let's go ahead and jump in. Like I said, this is the screen I see when I sign in to NHDWebCentral for the first time. To get there, you're just going to go to NHDWebCentral.com and create an account if you have not created one already. I'm going to assume that most of you have already passed that point, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through here. If it's your very first time, you're going to click Start Now. I'm going to zoom back in a little bit more so this is easier for everyone to read. And you can see as soon as I start my site, a couple things are going to appear: a site key and my URL. This is your URL. Every time you save your site, it updates at this URL. So your site is kind of always live on the internet. And so that's kind of nice because that gives you the ability to preview what your site is going to look like anytime. Once you, if you are participating in the Chicago Metro History Fair regional contest, when you register, you're going to be asked for your site key and your site link, and those are both found right here. So anytime you log into NHDWebCentral, this is the screen that will greet you, and this is your site key and your site link that you'll need when you register right here. You'll also see a little bar that shows how much space you have left with your site. Right now, I am starting fresh, so the whole bar is full. I have 100 megabytes remaining. You need to look out for that, especially if you're not dealing with like videos or audio files. You're probably not going to have to worry about this. But if you are embedding video on your site, you will have to worry about this limit. And I have a video on our YouTube channel about embedding video that I'll make sure I send you after this workshop if you're kind of curious about more about video. I'm not going to talk too much about video in this workshop, but we do have a lot of help for that. Unless we get to the Q&A and people want to ask questions about video, and then we'll get there. But for now, if I were working on a group, so if you're doing a group website, you would need to allow link, and then it will give you kind of a team key that you can share with the other people in your group. They will then log in to NHDWebCentral and put that team key in to kind of join up with your site. But for now, I'm working individually. I'm not working with a team. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started on working on my site by clicking Edit Site. When you first log in, it's going to take you to this new features screen. I don't want that to appear every time I sign in, so I'm going to uncheck this box that says Show on Start, and that way that will kind of leave me alone. Otherwise, it'll pop up every time you sign in. So let's take a second to look around. I'm going to zoom in one more step. At the top of my screen, I've got kind of a toolbar. There's a lot of these that you're not going to find a whole lot of use for, but the one that I really, really want to draw your attention to is this blue Save button. Anytime something is working the way you want it to on your website, click that blue Save button. Anytime something is not working the way that you want it to on your website, or something seems broken or messed up, you are going to reload your entire page. And so that will kind of undo what you've been working on and go back to the last time that you pressed save. So you can, refresh your page with your little refresh button in your browser, or Control R on most computers will refresh your page. I don't have a plan to have my website mess up and need to refresh the page, but sometime today, I would be surprised if it does not bug out and make me refresh the page to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So really just make sure that you're aware of that. The other one that's really good to look out for is this eyeball, and you can press that and that'll give you a live preview of how your saved site looks right now. And that's exactly the way that like judges would see your site if they were to look at it right now. So the eyeball and the save button are definitely the two kind of like most commonly used buttons up there. And we'll talk about a lot of these other elements as we go. And then on the right side of your screen are kind of the building blocks of your site. And so like most of you probably already know and have kind of hopefully experimented a little bit with the basics. A lot of you kind of, and I should advance we are now talking about containers. A lot of my basic process of creating the site is going to be finding stuff here, dragging it over into the boxes on the left, and then customizing it, changing it as I would like to, and then pressing save. So let's go ahead and start building. So again, the format for today, I'm going to be walking you through kind of creating a simple site. I'm going to move fairly quickly through that because this will be recorded and you can replay it anytime you want. Ask questions in the chat as we go, and I will leave it to Sarah to interrupt me if those questions should be answered on the spot or if they can wait until later in the session. And we will have some time at the end for Q&A if there's specific questions that you have. I know some of you did submit questions before we started, and we will get to, I believe, all of those throughout the presentation. So first thing I want to show you here is right now, this is like my blank page, right? I've started with absolutely nothing, but you can see there actually is already something on my page. If I hover my cursor over, there is this thing that's called, you can see right here in blue, it says box. This is really a container and box. It kind of calls them interchangeably. But the container is, I think about the container as kind of the furniture on which you are building your exhibit. So, you know, when you walk into, like, let's say the Chicago History Museum, you don't walk into an exhibit and there's like a bunch of just like artifacts lying around on the floor, right? They're on display cases and containers and stands, and they're arranged in a certain way. And so similarly, when you're building your website, you're not just going to start throwing pictures and documents and your own explanations onto the page. We need to build a little bit of structure to kind of house those different elements of your page. And containers are the main way that you do that. This year, it's like a new thing that NHDWebCentral, it automatically starts every page with a container. This is really good, and you should use that container. So let me start with a title on your page. This is probably how most of your pages are going to start. You can see here, I clicked on the box, and this kind of, my building blocks went away. I went into a style menu. We'll come back to that style menu, but I want to get back to those blocks. So I'm going to go back to my very top right and click on this kind of four square thing. It's almost like the Windows icon. And that's going to be my basic building blocks. I'm going to start with a title. It's a pretty natural place to start, right? And I am going to drag that title onto my page. So I'm holding down my mouse button right now. You could see here, I have a choice. I can release it outside of that box or container, or I can release it inside of the box or container. I definitely want to release it inside the box or container. And in fact, you really should not be dropping really anything outside of a container. There's a few reasons why, but the simplest one is really just I'll show you a quick example. I'm going to make my demonstration site on the Great Chicago Fire. I picked a very general topic. That's too general for a history fair topic, but I didn't want to steal anybody's topic. So do you remember before I said that I did something right? And so I'm going to press save real quick. And now you notice I did like the wrong thing. I put the title outside the container, right? And so when I preview that website now, you can see it runs all the way to the edge of that site. And it's kind of like the margins on an actual piece of paper. It's kind of doesn't really, it's not easy to read or pleasing to the eye to have your text running all the way to the edge like that. I'm sorry for the little fuzziness right here. I hope that's not too distracting. But instead, if I now go back and I take this title, and I want to move it, so I'm gonna, I guess it does work for me to grab the text itself, but if you ever need to move something, you can also use this kind of, I don't know, cross pad thing and grab that to move your elements around the page. So I'm just gonna drag that, and I'm gonna drag it into that original container. And you can see that now it's like constrained and it wants to stay inside of that container. I'm gonna press save and preview again and show you kind of the difference. And this is super basic, like there's not a lot on this page to show you the example, but you can see now it kind of adds a nice little margin for me. And even if I ignore this crazy stuff on the right side of the page, but even if I make the screen smaller, and even if someone's looking on a, even if someone's looking on a smaller device, you can see that now it's gonna kind of keep those margins and it's gonna resize nicely according to the device we're on. So I will, basically everything I'm going to be showing you today, we're going to build inside of the containers. Sometimes you might want to, just to keep things really clear for yourself, you might find it easier sometimes to stack two containers on top of each other. If you're adding more and more things to your page, you can do that. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. So you can see here I have one container with a title in it. I can also put more than one thing into that container. So let's say I also want to put a subtitle, and maybe this would be your name, something like that. Now I would also like to put some text in there. This is how I made that little welcome page for you guys. This is my home page. And then, you know, just to keep things straight, if you wanted to kind of, it's up to you. You can keep stacking things in that one container. But if it's easier just for you as you're building it to kind of stay organized, you might instead choose to kind of put things. I'm having trouble like hitting that one container, dropping it in there where I wanted to. So I'm struggling to put this into the second container. So maybe not the best example here, but you get the idea of what I'm going for. Maybe I'll have a better opportunity to show you later. I'm gonna, as I said, I'm having some issues. So I pressed F5 or Control R to reload my page. Let's see if that fixed my kind of, I'm doing something wrong. That's okay, I'll come back to it. But in theory, you should be able to stack those containers and put different things inside of them, and it should be no problem. Okay, and for now, I'm gonna delete that second container. So I've shown you actually already a couple things. I've got one container, and you saw the way that I was just dragging kind of those text elements into it. And if you've started on NHDWebCentral, you've probably already gotten past all this stuff. You've probably already figured this stuff out. So we will get more advanced pretty quickly. But I just want to make sure if anyone hasn't started yet, that they're kind of familiar with these kind of basics of working with containers. The other thing I just want to mention is the containers are always going to be, think of the container like a box, like they called it a box. Anything in that box needs to be totally contained in that box. So like for example, this text, it's not going to be able to run outside of that container. It's not going to be able to go past something else that's underneath it. So some of the ways that you're used to things wrapping around each other in like Microsoft Word are not going to quite work the way that you expect, but I'll show you some kind of workarounds for that as we go. So I've already moved on, talked a little bit about containers, and I've already actually shown you some titles and some text, right? So I showed you kind of that process of just, yep, let's grab a title, let's grab a, you can see there's these examples of like subtitle or header or text. Just play around with those. This was an example of the subtitle. This was an example of the text. You can also change, you know, just because this one is a subtitle, it defaults to being like a little larger font size and things like that. But you can customize all of this. So if I would like my name to appear in, let's say, I don't know, let's say gray instead of a black color font, I can do that. And the way I'm gonna do that is by just clicking on my text box, and that should automatically kind of click this paintbrush thing, which is your style. So this text box is called an element, and every element of your web page has a style. So I'm gonna open up the styling for this subtitle element, and I'm gonna select all my text. Some of it like will pop up. It does have a nice little, if you want to make it bold or italics, but if I want to get a little deeper and like change the color of the text, let's say, I can go into this style menu and I'm going to go into, I think that's a decoration. They're going to consider that. Maybe not, maybe that's under font. Yeah, font color. And I could change that from black to, let's say, like just a gray color or something like that. Actually, that's hard to see. That's a bad choice. Let's just make it red. And now my name is red. I can click save. I can preview that, and I can see that's looking pretty good. That's looking kind of like what I was expecting. And I feel like my fire theme of black and red is developing organically without me even meaning to. So next, let me get into images. Images are a little more, you know, there's a couple more steps than just adding the text. And obviously, if you wanted to add like text from your secondary source, like remember I showed you a while ago, I have this kind of secondary source text. Ooh, that's hard to read. Ready to go. You know, I can just copy and paste that. Copy and paste it directly into the text box of my web page. Now, anytime you do that, this is like kind of my caution to you, because it is so easy to copy and paste text. I won't even say it. You know what you need to do. If you're going to copy and paste text from somebody, along with that text from a source, it needs to include something that tells you where you got it, right? A citation. So I would need to, along with this text, because this is a quote, I would put quotation marks around it. And I would say, use a better citation than that. But I'm pretty sure for me, I got this one from the web of memory. So that's what I'll go with. So like I said, text fairly straightforward. Let's go, I want to show you an image now. So back to my building blocks. You can see right here, pretty obvious, I've got an image that I want to drag in, and I'm going to drag in that image between my name and this text block here. Okay, so let me grab that, and I'm going to just slide it right in between, and I'm going to release. As soon as I let that go, it automatically prompts me. It's like, okay, you've told me where you want to put the image. What image do you want? I'm going to double click this blank box, and that's going to bring up a dialog on my computer screen that you won't be able to see because of the way I'm kind of sharing my screen. But like I told you, I have these files downloaded on my computer, and so it's just a simple like file selection box. And so I'm selecting the one that I want right now. So I've selected the file from my computer, and that's kind of added it to, this is sort of like my file library for my NHDWebCentral site. The last thing that I really need to make sure that I do, I think it still didn't actually add the picture, it just added a placeholder. So even though I'm going to double click that placeholder to get back into this menu, even though I uploaded the file to my site, I still need to kind of tell it like, this is the picture I want to appear on that spot on my page. So I need to click that file. And then it's weird, there's no like save button or anything like that. So I can double click this to kind of confirm and make it go away, or I can just click it once and then sort of X out. And that's gonna make my picture appear on the page. We've got sort of a, it's nice, like the picture appeared, but we've got like sort of an obvious problem at this point, right? It's a very large picture. So when I click save and I click my preview again, oh, wow, guys, this is an update to NHDWebCentral they must have made to make your lives a little bit easier. I'm still going to teach you the trick, but you might not actually need this trick. This is amazing. This is a very recent change to NHDWebCentral. So what I was expecting was for that picture to really run off the page the way you can see it doing here. And maybe it's something with my zoom that's making it appear this way. So I'm going to keep rolling, and I'm going to see if I can recreate the issue and show you how to fix it. Sorry, doing things on the fly. The image might just not be as big as I thought. I might be zoomed in more than I thought. But that's your basic idea of how to add an image. And one little thing that I just want to point out with images too, just like remember with the text, I was able to click on the text and I was able to go into the style and mess around with the font and things. Same with the picture, you can click the picture, go into the style and play around with a couple things. Dimension is probably the one you're going to want to mess with to change the size of your picture. But one thing that does just kind of come in handy sometimes that I also want to show you is under decorations, changing the opacity. That's like how see-through something is. If it's opaque, you can't see through it at all. The opposite of opaque is transparent, where you can totally see through it. And sometimes this is really nice, especially if you want an image to kind of like, you know, be unselected or be sort of like almost like a background image or a decoration. Changing this transparency, not just on images, but on your text can be a cool way to create some layers sometimes. So I just want to point that out. That's sort of an advanced thing, but just so you know it's there, that opacity can come in handy. And if you're kind of advanced with NHDWebCentral, you can do some cool and clever things with that. So, so far I've showed you how to add titles and text and images to your site. Now I want to get into layouts and columns, and I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to figure out whether they changed NHDWebCentral to make a nice little update, or whether I am just working with a smaller image than I thought. So for now, actually, I'm going to hit this little trash can by my image because I actually changed my mind and I don't want it there right now. Because instead of taking up, you'll know, I want you to notice something about every element I've added so far. They don't understand how to not take up the whole row, right? Like the title, it took up a whole row. My name, it doesn't, that text actually doesn't fill up a whole row, but there's no way for me to kind of add, like if I wanted to add another text box, you would kind of think I could add it to the left of my name, Tyler, right there, but I can't. I can really only add it above or below, right? And so that's a weird behavior that you might not be expecting, and it can sometimes be frustrating when you're trying to build your site. And so I'm going to show you the easiest and quickest way around that is working with, like you can see, layouts and columns. So far, all the blocks that I've grabbed from the page have been here under basic, but if I keep scrolling down, I can go past basic and into my structure. This is where I grabbed my container. And then I'm going to even go past that and go into easy layout. So one that I like, I just think this is like kind of what I did for my Blackhawk page. I just think it looks nice. I like this 3-column layout for the home page. It's not a requirement or anything. That's just what Tyler thinks looks nice. So I'm going to drag that 3-column layout into this little spot right here between my name and the text where I was originally going to add that image. Now you can see I've got 3 kind of empty, I'm going to zoom in one more step, but now kind of 3 empty boxes side by side. So check this out. I'm going to take my text that I already wrote. I'm going to add that in the left-hand box. And look at that. It kind of knows, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit, but it sort of knows to wrap that around, right? And keep the other, like it keeps it from taking up the whole row the way this was doing. Now, I want to add that picture back into the center column. So I'm going to go to my blocks. I'm going to go to image, drag that into the center, right? I could put it in either one of these, but I want to put it in the center, release. And then this is sort of what I was mentioning earlier, because I already uploaded that picture once, it's just here ready for me to grab. I don't need to select it from my computer again. So I'm just going to double click that, and that's going to drop that onto my page. Zooming back out. Now this will be the real test. Did they change NHDWebCentral or not? So I'm going to preview this page again. Yeah, perfect. So 2 things I want you to notice. One, now I've been able to put elements side by side because of this column layout thing. But like this picture is still way too big, right? So I was wrong. They did not fix NHDWebCentral. You're still going to need this little tip. And this is a super important tip coming right up. This picture is not playing nicely within the column that I set up for it, right? If I want to, there's another column right there to the right, that 3rd column. I should be able to add some text there. And you can already see this is messed up, right? This is not how I want this to be happening. I don't want these 2 things to kind of overlap. There might be cases where you do want to overlap. You know, that's advanced. I'm kind of not going to be showing you how to do that, but you can kind of get the idea actually from this little glitch. But if I save this is like a bad viewing experience for, again, unless you want to do that, but that's not what I'm going for. I wanted text on one side, image in the middle, text on another side. And that's not what happened here. So I'm going to show you an absolutely essential trick. So anytime you're working with an image, anytime you're working with like a video, and when you're embedding your PDFs, they are not going to play nicely with the containers that you put them in unless you tell them to. And so now I'm going to tell this one too. Let me close some tabs here. Oops. So I need to tell this picture to like play nicely within the columns that it is that we've tried to confine it in. So I'm going to select that image, and you can see I've grabbed the image here. And again, it opens up this style box for me automatically, but if it doesn't, for some reason, it's this red paintbrush kind of thing. So I'm going to grab that red paintbrush. I want to go down to dimension, and this is the key right here. I need to zoom in probably more. I know this is probably hard for you guys to see, so that's too much. But on the right-hand side, so remember, I clicked my image, I went to my style, and I went to dimension here. Width is set to auto. Telling a picture its width can be auto is like telling the picture it can do whatever it wants. And so that picture says to itself, hey, I know I've got 4,000 pixels of image width. I'm going to use all 4,000 pixels. It doesn't matter if I'm on a phone or if I'm on a nice big projector screen or what. So this is kind of like permission for the picture to go rogue, and we need to fix that. So instead of width being auto, I'm going to change the width by just deleting auto, and I'm going to type in 100%, and I'm going to hit enter. It seems like I did what I want, so now I'm going to press save right away. So what I did now is, instead of saying auto, do whatever you want picture, I said 100%, which means, hey, picture, you can now take up 100% of the column you're in and nothing more. Before it would take up like 500% more than the whole column if you let it. But now we're saying, hey, you can take up that column and nothing more. So now when I preview this, look what's happened. Even though the picture got smaller, right? Because in order to show the whole picture, it had to stay proportional. But this is really what I was going for. Now my 3 columns all display. I've got text on the left, picture in the middle, obviously gibberish text, but text on the right. And even if I start to work with a little bit smaller of a screen, again, ignore this gibberish on the right of your screen here. But even if I work with a smaller and smaller screen, it's going to kind of know. I know that's getting teeny tiny for you guys, sorry. But the system sort of knows now, because we've got the container, because we set that 100% property, that, hey, it doesn't matter if your judge is looking on a 25-inch desktop screen or a 17-inch laptop screen, they're going to see the site pretty much as you intended for them to see the site. So just one more time, I want to show you how that works. You're going to click the picture. You're going to go to your style, dimension, and set your width to 100%, and press enter. It's a little weird, but it's a great trick. And just a quick side note, because I'm about probably halfway through my presentation here. I know we're more than halfway through the time, so it's okay, we'll be all right. But just a quick side note, this is like kind of an advanced tip for anybody who is interested in, maybe like, if you like this and you're thinking like, hey, I might want to design web pages like for a job or for a hobby or something like that. This is one of those tips that you can use even when you're a professional web developer. That's like going to be a principle that you're is gonna apply for you. I saw a great question in the chat, which was, do we need to do anything about height? The simple answer is that the height should take care of itself 99.9% of the time. If you find that you are having issues, and you might especially run into these with pictures with weird proportions, so they're much wider than tall or much taller than wide. Sometimes you can find that it helps to also change that height to 100%. But in most cases, that is not what we want to do, like here. So if you're really having trouble getting the 100% width to work, sometimes the height is what you want. But why that is sort of a combination between really complicated to explain, and I don't quite know. So we'll just leave it at that. But most of the time, you should be set working on the width. And one thing I will just say too, feel free to play around with any of these. Like once you hit the blue save button, like go nuts until you hit the blue save button again, right? It's just that if you do get yourself like into a hole and you have, created this weird monstrosity of an image like this, try to remember not to click save again, or you might, find yourself a little bit stuck. And then this is probably a good time to mention, if you do find you've created a little bit of a monster, it's no problem to just select your element, erase it, and start over with that element by adding your image again. Or if you've really, if things have really not gone well, this trash can will delete your entire page canvas. So don't click that by accident. But if you're like, oh, I've learned a lot from this page, I'm ready to start it over, the trash can will just clear the page and start over. I see the question in the chat, do you have to use the container? We are urging you in the strongest possible terms to use a container. Your site will kind of be noticeable without it in a way that will stick out a little bit. So it is not necessarily a rule, but especially because it's built into the system, it is something that is really going to help your presentation of your site. So I would really just strongly encourage you. I'm wondering too, I don't know if this is where the question is coming from, and it's fine whether it is or isn't, but I just want to point out, if you have already done a lot of work outside of the container, let's say you have created a whole nice page that is not in that container, whoops, you can drag stuff. You should even be able to grab this whole entire kind of row layout. No, I'm breaking everything. I'm not going to click the blue button because I'm messing stuff up. But if you've created stuff outside of the container, for the most part, you can drag those things inside the containers. And if you're feeling like that is like an insurmountable task, email us your website URL and we can take a look. And I do a lot of website stuff even outside of History Fair. So it's kind of fun for me to help you all with this. So if you're like, hey, here's my site, can you help me figure out what I did or how to fix it? Send it over to us, historyfair@chicagohistory.org, and that's no problem. We can't guarantee we'll get to it right away, but we'll do our best to help you. Okay, I need to kind of move it along, just looking at the clock here. So I want to quickly touch on colors and design. I want to zoom back into my window a little bit more. This is, boy, this is like this has gotten real ugly. I need to reload it. Okay, so we're back in like sanity land here. Okay, so you can see I've just been like doing really basic stuff. The only thing I've done with visuals is changed my text color to red. You can, like I've already shown you, by going into the style and your decorations, change some things, but I really would urge you, do not go around and mess with the actual style of individual elements until you have had a chance to visit and kind of decide on your site theme. So you have this purple, I guess the paint palette, you can click that, and that will automatically, it will bring up this box. And so you can say, hey, for my website, sorry, the pop-ups don't appear correctly on you guys' screen, but I'm looking at like a text selector here. And so I would like to change my text to Courier New, which is kind of a typewriter font. And I would like my default font to be, you know, don't do anything that's hard to read, but maybe a little more gray. And I would like my default background color to be this kind of light pink color. I don't know, obviously pick whatever you want, but what you're going to see is when you play with these and click save, it automatically kind of applies that. So my default font, I'll change to that Courier New, that kind of typewriter style. I can still go into this and I can change, I could change this individual font, but like be careful with that. Making sure that your judges can read things and that it makes sense to them is really the highest priority. One thing you might want to consider is like if you're quoting a secondary source using a certain font or using, let's say, like a decoration of maybe, you can go, like I'm going to go into my decorations and I'm going to add a little border here. Oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. I need a border of a couple pixels here. And what that did is it just created a box around the text, right? And so there's little things like that that you can do by going into the style of your element. Again, I just selected my text element, I went into the style, and I went into the decorations. Little things you can do like that to individual kind of pieces to spice it up a little bit, but really don't go too crazy. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do. Like you could add shadows and you could do like cursive text and you could do like, you know, neon colors and anything like that that's really distracting for the judges and distracts from the words that you're trying to say is usually not a good idea. And you usually want to kind of keep it simple. So a nice recognizable theme helps, but don't go overboard. Okay. So again, that is by the color palette, this purple kind of color palette. And pick colors that relate to your topic. You know, it's always a smart idea. Okay, moving right along. Now that we've kind of, you know, I've shown you a lot of the basics, I'm going to click save and we're going to kind of cruise from here. So next thing I'm going to talk about is creating new pages. You can see at the top of my window up here, it automatically started me off with a page called Home. And I am going to click on that and click on, for me, it says Manage Pages. You can't see that pop up, but I'm going to click on Manage Pages. And it brings this little box up. So you can see on the left are the pages I already have. I've got Home. It's usually, you could change that, but it's usually smart just to stick with that and just kind of leave your home page as home. It's not a rule or anything. It's up to you. But it doesn't hurt to leave your home page as home. Hopefully you all know, you know, according to the rule book, you need to have a home page. I've been actually giving you a bad example this whole time because I've been creating this homepage with all this stuff on it, but really your homepage should say your project name, your name, it should say like junior division, individual website or senior group website or whatever it is. There is a place, Student of the Week, where you can look at example websites, and Sarah can paste that in the chat for you. Great question. We do have some from last year that were made on this system, so it's a really good question. But make sure you're following the rules, not my example, for your homepage, and we'll make sure we link those to you. But back to what I was doing, if I wanted to make another page, I'm going to skip ahead just for the purposes of this demo. Your site should have a bunch of pages, right? It's common to have one that's maybe like your intro or historical context, one that's kind of talks about your main event, maybe one or two that talk about the legacy or the impact or different things like that. Again, those aren't rules, but those are just ideas that work for a lot of different topics. For today, I'm going to skip straight ahead to a references page. You need to have your process paper and your annotated bibliography as PDFs somewhere on your website, embedded on your website. Most of the time, you're going to want to do this on like a references page. You could call the page something different if you want. You could have one page for your bibliography and one page for your process paper if you prefer. But what I'm going to be showing you today is how to create one page called references, where you're going to have your process paper and your annotated bibliography side by side. So I'm going to go on the right here and click Create New Page. The page name is what is going to appear to the public. So I'm going to call that References with a capital R. And then the page title is what is going to appear in your address bar when they go to it. And so that can't include any spaces or capital letters or anything. So it'll change it for you automatically if it needs to. But just so you know, if you're curious why it does that, if you do like, I'll actually go ahead and do it. I'll call it Works Cited. It's probably not what you would want to call it. But if I click Add Page, you're going to see, I'm going to save. And now, again, sorry, you guys can't see this pop up, but when I click it, I can see now I have a home page and a references page. I'm going to click onto my references page and there's nothing here, but you can tell my theme is already applied. So it's kind of already got my background color. If I had picked a container color, that would already be here. The thing I need to show you quickly before embedding your process paper and bibliography on the page is there's a big problem with this page right now. Even if I had a title on it and it said, you know, references, and even if I added all the elements that I wanted to, once a user is here, there's like no escape for them, right? There's no way to get back to the other page, and we don't have a way for them to navigate between the two pages that I've created. So right now I have a home page and I have a references page, but there's not really a way for the user or for your judge to connect the two. And so the way that we're going to do that, this is a really cool thing that they added this year for the system, is by doing, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for this one that's called Auto Nav. I don't know what this icon is supposed to be, magic wand maybe, but I'm going to drag the Auto Nav. I like it right underneath the title, or in this case, probably right underneath my name near the top. It's usually a good idea to put this kind of the same spot on every page. And so I messed up, guys. I'm sorry. So this is, you can see it made my menu bar. I mixed up when I was telling you guys the difference between the title and the name of your page. So I named my page. What did I do? I wanted that to say references. So let's see. I don't know. I'm running out of time, so I'll let you all troubleshoot which is which, but one of them does not allow capital letters, and I'm obviously getting them a little bit mixed up. So it didn't update there, but if I save it and reload my page, it should figure that out. And so this is really cool. Once I've added the auto nav to my homepage, I could keep adding more pages, and the auto nav, or sometimes it's called smart nav, it's like interchangeable. It knows, and it will keep updating automatically with that. So right now it's just got home and references. Let's say I want to go and I want to add a third page. I'm not really going to show you, you know, I'll add a page called introduction. And I'm not going to like build this page for you, right? But if I click add page and I save and I again reload my home page, it knows this menu bar, and this is clickable, right? If I preview this, somebody could click on home, that's where we already are. Somebody could click on references. But so far it's a one-way trip. And so to fix that, we are going to, as you can probably already figure out, go to my references page. Whoops, I need to save this one. Go to references. And again, I'm sorry you can't see this pop up, but hopefully you can imagine what the pop-up would look like when I'm switching pages. Now I've got my references, and I'm just gonna simply drag my auto nav onto this page too. And it's already automatically set up. It's going to automatically stay updated. Good question on the drop-down pages. That's actually I can talk about that right now. So first I just want to show you now I can easily bounce back and forth between home and references, home and references. Introduction seems like it's in the wrong place though. So I'm going to fix that while I answer that question that just appeared in the chat, because you probably would want references would probably be the last thing on your list. So I'm going to double click. I'm back in my editing window. I'm going to double click on my auto nav. And right here, I've got this thing called Nav Editor. And by grabbing the items here, I can rearrange them. So check it out. I'm holding down my mouse button. I'm going to try and move introduction now between home and references. And you might have to kind of like wiggle it around, but there we go. There, now it's between home and references. I'm going to save that. Whoops, save. Cool, so that worked, right? I was able to kind of put introduction in the right spot. But as for the nesting thing, you might have noticed, I'm going to double click that again to get into my little editor. I don't have enough pages to kind of like do a good drop down thing, but hopefully this will give you the idea. Let's say I wanted references to be a sub page of introduction. Instead of dragging it, see how, if I put it in the right spot, see how it creates this purple line that's kind of like an extender, like an L-shaped thing. If I get that to appear, so now I'm dragging references to be a nested under or a child of, it's called introduction. And so you can see the menu gets funky here. So like experiment, it gets a little strange sometimes, but experiment with it. And this is, that will lead you to the answer that you're looking for. So I'm going to save. I'm zoomed in too far, and so I can't see my little eyeball, and I need to zoom out. But now with my eyeball, you can see I've got this introduction, and I can click that, and it drops down to see the two links that are created. So I hope that helps. I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to move past that, but that gives you the idea, and you can play with. You can see it adds these little asterisks around it. I don't really like that, but you can get rid of them just by going in. And really, again, the key is double clicking on that smart nav and then dragging the things around. And it really gets weird once you start nesting them. So kind of remember that reload trick. If things don't go the way that you want them, to unnest things is a little strange sometimes. As you can see, so here's, this is how I would like it to be. Back to just home, introduction, references. That's what I'm going for. Cool. All right, let's get to, oops, I missed the thing. That was adding navigation, folks. Let's go to embedding PDF files. So let me go back to my editor. I need to close some tabs. All right, let's go back to my editor and let's go to that references page. Like I said, I would like to show you all how to put the bibliography and the process paper side by side. How you lay them out is up to you, but that's just kind of my choice. So I'm going to go into my blocks, and remember to put anything side by side. They're not going to, I can't just drag them next to each other, drag and drop them next to each other. If I tried to do that by embedding multimedia here, it doesn't let me put them side by side. It's going to stack them on top of each other, and that's not what I want. So instead, I need to go to my layouts. I need to scroll down. I'm just going to do a 2-column layout. On my homepage, I was showing you all 3-column, but I'm going to do 2-column layout, drag that into my container, and that's created a box on the left and a box on the right. Each of those boxes is going to contain an embedded multimedia. So embed multimedia is what you're looking for here. And I want to drag one of those into the left-hand box. That's going to be my process paper, and one of them into the right-hand box. They're going to overlap and they're going to overflow right now, but I'm going to fix that later. Just to keep these straight, I would also like to add subtitles. So I'm just going to drag those right above their respective embed multimedia boxes. All right, like I said, before I started this workshop with you all, I put my annotated bibliography and process paper, at least I hope I did, in a folder on my computer. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure I did, but let's see. So you can see we've got, remember like we did with the images, I've told it, this is where I want to put the thing. Now I need to tell it what I'm putting there. So I'm going to double click this. This is going to bring up my add a file dialog. And so I will find my process paper, which I've already saved as a PDF. Sorry that you can't see that dialog, but trust me. And then just like the image, it's going to pop up here, and I just need to double click it. And then it'll appear kind of in that embed multimedia placeholder. You can see we're running into that overlapping. Yes, we will definitely send out the recording to everybody by tomorrow. This will be a quick turnaround one. Thanks for joining us. If you got a scoot, sorry, I'm going long. But let me add my bib, my annotated bibliography, to the right-hand one. And like I already showed you guys with the images, we know what's going to happen. We know they're going to overlap and overflow in kind of a gross way here. So you can see this is like right now, it's all messed up, right? This PDF is running off the side of this container. Especially if I resize the page, then things really get bad. So let's fix that. We're going to use the exact same trick that I showed you earlier. I'm going to click here. If I double click the element, it's going to bring up the page to select which file I want. So I don't want to double click it. I just want to single click. That's going to let me bring up this style sheet. And so you remember, just like we did with the images, dimension, I don't know why it hard codes in a 615. That's not good. We're going to change that to 100%. Oh, good. I'm glad you all get to witness one of the weirdest behaviors of NHDWebCentral. I went to change auto to 100%, and it started typing backwards. I don't know if anybody caught that, but sometimes 100 will type in from right to left instead of from left to right. But now it's fixed. I'm going to set that width to 100% and press enter. Okay, yeah, it did it. And then my height, somebody was asking about height earlier. This is an example of where we actually want it on auto and it's not on auto. So I'm going to change that. So with 100% height auto, I want to do the same thing to the file next to it. Hit enter. And that still looks a little, that's kind of strange the way it appeared right now, but I think that's mostly because I'm just super zoomed in. Let's see how it looks on my preview. Let's save and preview. That's still really weird. It's running over the container. And this is a good example of the kind of stuff you will run across as you're creating a page too. And so, you know, finding workarounds is going to be a part of your job sometimes. I think for me, what I would probably consider doing is, I don't know, will this work? I'm going to add another container kind of below it, and I'm going to see if I can make that container really tall. I'm just going to say like 500 pixels. And it's not ideal, but at least they don't run off the page that way. I will say I'm a little surprised too that the process paper and the bib are not taller, because with that auto, and it might seem like I don't know what I'm doing, but this is really a good demonstration for you guys, because stuff like this will happen from time to time. And you know, I kind of don't know why it's behaving differently this time than in the past. But let's go back. Let's reload my references page. And let's make sure it's still doing it. That's always good if it's messing up to reload and test it again. Yeah, it's still doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of my height being auto, I'm going to try and kind of guess how tall I think a page should be. Let's try 750. That's a little too tall, but it's still better. As long as your judges can see your materials, that's really, really the key. Huh, so it's behaving a little weirdly right now. It's not quite zooming in the PDF I would like. But more experimentation with that, you know, go back in, change your percentages, do different things like that. And really, especially with your references, as long as the PDF is visible by the judges, that's kind of the key. But obviously you want it to look as nice as you can. Okay, so with that little unexpected hiccup at the end, that's all I have. Real quickly, let me show you. I'm going to scrap my page, and I'll start from scratch with my references. So this is like a blank page. If you just click new page and had nothing there, this is what you would see. First thing that I'm going to do is go into my blocks, and I'm going to drag in 2 columns just because I want them side by side. And I'm going to go again in my blocks. Back up towards the top is this one called Embed Multimedia. It looks like a little blank page. I'm just going to drag an Embed Multimedia into my left column. And I'm going to drag an Embed Multimedia into my right column. That kind of puts like the kind of like empty frames for those files onto my page. And then I want to fill those frames with my PDF files that I've already created. So like somebody else asked, you know, they can't be Google. If you made them on Google, you have to download them as PDF. It's really easy to do. But once you've got these empty frames, you're going to double click, and that'll bring up your kind of dialog box to pick the PDF files from your computer. I've already kind of added them, and I'm going to do process paper on the left, double click it, double click my other empty frame, and double click my bibliography. And then the last thing I want to do is just click the kind of this title bar. There's the thing that says click here once to select element. That's what I want to do. Select that, go into my styles, go into my dimensions, and change my width to 100%. There's that weird backwards typing thing again I was mentioning, but I'm just going to hit 100% and press enter. Same with the other one. Go over here, 100%, enter. And that's pretty much it. You can play around. You're probably going to want to play around with the height a little bit more, but that's the gist of it. And then you can see that'll load my process paper on one side, bibliography on the other.